Conference Committee Report number 133-14, final reading of Senate Bill 2609, Conference Draft 1 relating to minimum wage.
Discussion. If not, Senator Ruderman.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I rise in support of this bill.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. As the employer of over 150 people, no one has more at stake here than I do, specifically and financially. Among business people, it's often expected that I would oppose this. Yet I vigorously support this overdue increase. While I was hoping for more increase sooner, I'm happy that we're acting this year. Many so-called business people oppose the increase, but that's not fair. When someone gives their life's energy to a business as a full-time employee, that employee deserves a living wage in return. The employee is supporting the business and helping it succeed. Who else other than the business should support that full-time employee to succeed in the very basics of life? Rent, food, medical, living expenses. Business is about people. People take care of the business should take care of its people. Some say laissez-faire, hands off of business, and get government out of business. Let the market decide. And included in this stance is the personal responsibility mantra. But let's look more closely at that. When a business pays only a subpar minimum wage, the employee turns to government to make up the difference in food stamps and other assistance, and in the worst cases, adds to the homelessness problem. All of these cost the government money. Why shouldn't a profitable business pay its fair share instead of relying on government subsidy to keep their employees afloat? What about self-reliance for the business? Even the new wage at its eventual maximum of $10.10 is not a living wage in Hawaii. But the increase will raise the whole pay scale in many cases and is a step in the right direction. We have the highest cost of living in the nation. Our minimum wage ought to at least be among the highest also. It's only fair. Thank you, Madam President.
Further discussion, Senator Baker.
Thank you, Madam President. I too rise in strong support of Senate Bill 2609 relating to the minimum wage.
Please proceed.
Colleagues, 85% of Hawaii's minimum wage earners are 21 years and older. 47% are women. So it's not just an equity issue, but it's also a fairness issue. 2 in 3 tipped workers are women, and 1 in 3 workers are parents. Tipped workers are parents. According to the Hawaii State Commission on the Status of Women, most female minimum wage earners are the sole breadwinners of their families. We are all aware that the minimum wage in Hawaii has remained at $7.25 an hour since 2007. Let me offer just a few perspectives on what has happened in the intervening years. In 2007, a monthly bus pass here on Oahu was $40. Since then, it's risen to $60. In 2007, the Star Bulletin, our paper at the time, reported a half gallon of milk costing $2.74. Today it costs $3.49. In 2008, the Star Bulletin reported a 20-pound bag of rice cost $7.99. Today it costs $13.49. Raising the minimum wage, I contend, will have a direct positive impact on Hawaii's families. Hawaii's women with children are disproportionately represented in low-wage jobs, and they are the ones who will gain the most from an increase in the minimum wage. The rate at which the minimum wage would increase is conservative, but it takes crucial steps in the right direction we need in order to move families forward. We need to ensure that as the minimum wage increases, our small businesses can sustain themselves and their employees who depend on them. I urge my colleagues to join me in voting yes on this very important piece of legislation, and I would like to say mahalo to the Judiciary and Labor Chair for his leadership in this area.
Further discussion. If not, Senator Sloan.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, I rise with even stronger opposition to this bill.
Please proceed.
This bill probably is the worst bill of the legislative session in terms of creating jobs, because it will destroy jobs. It will not increase our economic wherewithal or our ability to pay for higher costs. I regret that the good senator from Puna used the term so-called businesses. I don't know of any so-called businesses. I do know of the businesses that have written to you and to me that have told you what the impact will be if we raise these costs. I've mentioned before on the Senate floor that as a business owner, not only does the wage go up, but also the employer mandates go up that are based on any wage increases, such as your workers' compensation insurance, unemployment compensation tax, temporary disability insurance, the matching taxes that you pay and all of that. So it's not just a single amount that goes up. I also hear from my colleagues, again, trying to mix a minimum wage, a forced government minimum wage, which has nothing to do with productivity or output, with a living wage. And certainly all of us would like more money. The question is, where does the money come from, and what happens when you force that increase? My colleague from Maui just gave us good recitation on price increases, and we're all suffering through that. But the price increases came at large measure because of bills that this legislature has passed, mandating increases for the very same areas where prices have increased. And we can guarantee you that prices will increase in those areas where minimum wage is actually an issue. If we're using percentages, let's stick to the facts. Less than 2.5% of all workers are minimum wage employees. And of that 2.5%, they understand that it is an entry or training wage only to get your foot in the door. First, you got to have a job. If you do anything right, that minimum wage or that wage goes up and increases. But it can't go up to what some people would like, $20 an hour, $30 an hour, $50 an hour, without some consequences. And there are tremendous consequences here. So we don't listen, again, to the business community. We haven't suggested or passed one bill that's going to help our business community or create jobs here. Instead, we will hurt the very people that need a foothold and an opportunity to get a job. In terms of turning to government, it's been our desire to make more people dependent on government and to use our largesse so that now we spend more on welfare than we do on public education in the state of Hawaii. This will continue not because we have a lower minimum wage. It will continue because we have too much government and we continue to increase it. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senator He.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in strong support.
Please proceed.
First of all, I want to thank my colleagues on of the majority who allowed me the opportunity to go to conference on this measure and allowed the conferees the opportunity to try to improve the life of the working poor. A year ago, the minimum wage did not pass, and I'm in reflecting now, I'm very grateful for that. It was reported accurately that I characterized last year's inability to pass a minimum wage bill at $9.25 an hour over 3 years, and $1.50 tip credit, as was offered by the House, as a damn shame. I was wrong from this point of view. I did not see enough prospectively to even think that today we would have a bill that provides for $10.10 over 4 years and a tip credit of 75 cents over a trigger. That makes it nearly impossible, in my own opinion, for employers to pay less than the minimum wage to the small neighbor island restaurants where tips are hard to come by. And for that creativity, I would like to thank my colleagues in the House for coming up with something as artistic as that. Were it up to me, there would be no tip credit. Because as I said earlier, a tip credit is nothing more than a red herring. And if this legislature was fully intended in its desires to provide some kind of financial relief, it would not do so in a tip credit, but in a tax credit. That sleight of hand and renaming of creativity to pay the working poor less, the most of whom are female, is very unfortunate. The fact of the matter is, And I think some people have said, kind of jokingly, that, well, as a result of going to conference, the net effect is 10 cents. You may recall that on April 4th, on April 2nd, the House Finance Committee took the House Labor Committee's recommendation of $10.10 and reduced it to $10, a difference of 10 cents. And on April 4th, I had my staff tape a dime on each of the members' desks. And I said that the dime should stay there to remind us of the working poor. Some people, in my own opinion, saw that as a measure of levity. The fact of the matter is, over those 28 days, that 10 cents is worth $22.40 today. And some of you may say, what's $22.40? Now it's my turn to laugh. Those of you who say $22.40 is not much, I wonder if you among nearly everyone who pumps their own gas, because it's cheaper to pump your own self-service than it is to go to a service station and have them pump your gas for you for an added cost. I wonder how many of us, because we have the means, when we go to the post office, we buy forever stamps. Because by doing so, when the Postal Service raises the cost of a stamp, we already bought it at a cheaper rate. And how many of us, when the Postal Service says they're going to raise the first class stamp by 3 cents, takes umbrage? The nerve of the U.S. Postal Service charging us 3 cents more. 10 cents may not seem like a lot to many of you. I don't think the working poor agree with you, if that's how you feel. Many of you, over the years, I have known personally, and I know that many of you have come from working families. Some of you got your meat from a can, just like me. Not from a cellophane package, but from a can of Vienna sausage, or Spam, or corned beef. And that's why, in large part, many of us have the same illnesses, because that's the meat that we could afford. Because of many of you on the floor, I was provided the opportunity to take a conference committee and try to make it better for the working poor. It may not be what we may have wished it to be, but there is no denying it is better than it was before we went to conference. And for that, I am eternally grateful to all of you. And the reason is, that's our job, to make life better. The previous speaker said, or implied, or alluded to, or gave the impression that raising the minimum wage will raise the cost of everything. That suggests that lowering the minimum wage would lower the cost of everything. And if that is true, somebody needs to explain how it is that while the minimum wage hasn't been increased, the state of Hawaii enjoys the #1 position for the cost of a hotel room rate in the nation. The fact of the matter is, by not raising the tourist tax, which some would argue, myself included, that it should be attached to an index, that the hotel room rate would stay the same. But in fact, the hotels have enjoyed a windfall. And today they're wondering where it is that cuts need to be made to bring more tourists to Hawaii. The cost will go up regardless of whether minimum wage is imposed by law, as it should be, or whether this bill dies today. That's a fact. For 7 years, the working poor have not enjoyed an increase. Every one of you and I have enjoyed an increase. We all know that. Labor unions have enjoyed an increase. But for 40% of the lowest working poor who are homeless, they have been working at $7.25 an hour. Every year, we have the opportunity and the privilege to make the lives of others better. Well, I would not argue that some of you would say that opportunity is embraced by the state budget. I would say to you humbly, just like Senate Bill 1 during special session, this measure moves the paradigm for working people and has the opportunity to allow them to enjoy life a little bit easier than they have done so up to now. So for those remarks, and again, the opportunity to take this bill to conference, I want to thank those of you who allowed me this. Thank you very much.
Further discussion. Senator Ruderman.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I rise to briefly address a couple of the remarks from my colleague from Hawaii Kai. To correct, I mentioned so-called business people, not so-called businesses. And the other comment I wanted to correct was the idea that the minimum wage is only an entry-level wage and can't be expected to be a minimum wage. Over the weekend, my partner and I visited her former workplace, which is a fast food restaurant. I don't need to name it. They're probably all similar. She was speaking to one of her colleagues who's been there for 7 years. The colleague has had several promotions and good reviews. After 7 years, the colleague is earning $8.50 an hour at a fast food restaurant. So I challenge the notion that the minimum wage is entry level only and is not expected to be a living wage. Thank you.
Further discussion. If not, do we have unanimous consent? No votes for Senator Sloan, all others voting in the affirmative.
24 ayes, 1 no.
Senate Bill 2609, CD1, passes final reading.